So when we look at, we have a kind of a up activity just for you to think about, because sometimes when we look at how we can maintain our physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional health, it helps to look at for what reasons. So if we look at what activity gives us the greatest joy, um, what do we want to continue to do? Is it chase grandchildren, or still be active in the powers yourself, or just being able to garden or cook? And then in order to do that, then what physical abilities do you need so you can continue doing this activity? So then as OTs, of course, we start breaking things down. We look at like a task analysis to help make the connections between what you need to do in order to enjoy the things that you love to do. So what activities can help you get and stay active? And so what we're going to do in this session, well, let me go to the next slide because that basically explains it. So our purpose today is really to help elders find ways to stay active and be active, get active, so they can continue to enjoy things within their community, but also so we can continue to have our elders, because they're such an important part of our communities, just to keep our culture and our traditions going. So the more we can help strengthen our elders in a variety of ways and take care of them, then the longer we'll have them so they can share their knowledge with us. And of course, the best activities that we're going to focus on throughout this is trying to make you connect with the fact that these are the ones that you enjoy and bring balance to your life. So we focus a lot on balance and how we continue to maintain that, as we age, and so we can age longer, more in a more purposeful way to meet our needs. So definitions from an occupational therapy perspective is we look at meaningful activities. We're going to use these terms, and those are anything you do. And so they could be something you want to do or something you need to do. So it could be you might not enjoy cooking, or you might, but some of them bring meaning to you. Something you need to do, let's say self-care, shower, dressing, keeping the house up. Those are all things that we need to do, but we also need the strength to do them. And if we can keep the strength in there, our elders stronger, then they won't need as much help to try and just do the dressing or the basic cares and the things that they need to do at home. And the second part you see, and I'm just waiting for the berry season to start. It never comes soon enough for me, but meaningful occupations then is anything you need or want to do as well. So berry picking, gardening, going visiting. I can tell you it's really been hard on the elders in my family with the pandemic, for not being able to go and visit people, because then there's a presentation earlier about isolation. And I know one of my aunts has really struggled with that. And it's kind of went over into, she's lost a lot of her strength and some depression coming in there. But gardening, washing dishes, getting dressed, etc. So these are things that occupy your time, in that you want to do or you need to do. Okay, next slide. So what we focus on is mobility. And this is, of course, being able to move around. But what occupational therapists do is they take it usually a different direction than what you might see some other professions do it. So we have functional mobility, which is the ability to move from one place to another to complete an activity or task safely. Should be well. That sounds boring, but what if we said that functional mobility was actually how you could continue to go visiting, how you could take a shower by yourself or a bath and be safe, being able to dress yourself. I mean, one of the things I think of is when my mom would talk about just how embarrassed she was that she could no longer dress herself. She needed me to help her with the shower, and there's going to come to a point sometimes when we need that. But the longer we can maintain our strength and functional mobility, then the more independent we can be and less dependent on others. Because that's a big thing I know with my mom too, was she did not want to bother, other people. So Next slide. So safe mobility. So we can talk about mobility, but there's a difference between mobility just in general and safe mobility. Okay. So how can we do this safely and still get around and not fall, break a hip or a knee? So the question is, how many of you know someone who's had a fall? And maybe it's yourself, you know, when you think about it. Falls actually can be prevented in a variety of ways. And that's what we're going to focus on today because Dr. Jansen worked with 2 students last year, and their whole focus was developing a falls prevention program and looking at safe mobility. And we'll talk about that in a bit too. She will, for Indigenous people. So they saw a need and they're trying to meet that need. Next slide. So here's some basic statistics, and you can actually download these easy from CDC and hand them out. You know, you can share them with people because they're not copyrighted, because the focus is to actually disperse them as much as we can. So each year, you know, you look at thousands of Americans fall at home. I mean, those numbers are significant. Often they're due to hazards that are within our home. An easy one that I always think about is rugs, throw rugs. You know, those are laying all over usually, and those are going to be your first. And sometimes it's shoes. Like if you have kids home yet or grandkids, they just take off their shoes wherever they want. Well, that does not help you when you try to walk through there either. You know, so that's use your shoe. So we have an introduction basically into the statistics of falls. On the next page, we look at this. I mean, this is another, you know, easy one. Just sometimes things are just kind of tossed and you think you'll go back to them, or someone walks through and they just toss something. But there's a couple things in here, you know, that actually could make this room more safe. Does anybody want to throw in a comment? Yes, thanks, Tasha. Yep, it's the cord. We got the rug. Plug in the fan, exactly right, or remove it. Oh, wow, good job.
Dr. Fox, may I add one thing?
Yes.
My grandmother tripped over the corner of the bedspread, and that's in this picture underneath that blanket. It's not her room, but she actually tripped over that corner of the bedspread and fell and broke her hip. And she never was able to return to independent living again. So it showcases the importance of some of the hidden hazards as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dr. Jansen. Okay, next slide. So basically then, we look at some of the issues that can cause falls. Let's look at how we can prevent them with some basic, you know, simple interventions, and then promote safe mobility for our elders. So of course, falling is one of the most common and serious risks, but staying active is a primary prevention tool. So sometimes people can be afraid to move because they don't want to fall, but that actually puts them at additional risk. So we want them to move, but we want to do it, you know, encourage them and make sure that they're doing it safely. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Jansen now.
All right. Well, I first want to thank everybody for allowing me to be here. It's an honor to be with you. And I hadn't mentioned my cultural heritage, but I did have a grandma who was Indigenous, and I did not know her. And I've always wanted to immerse myself more in Indigenous cultures and learn more. So I am on that learning curve, and every opportunity, I just want to be there to support, especially elders, because elders are very near and dear to my heart. So I want to help people age in place. That's one of my biggest missions in my whole life, is helping them age in place for as long as they can. And the influence of participation in activities is what's going to make that difference. So if somebody, you can look at these 2 pictures, the one on your left, anything with that may decrease participation. One thing is fear of falling or an actual fall. And that can cause a spiraling of events. So fear of falling can cause a decrease in participation, which can cause more weakness, which can cause more isolation. All of those combined can cause malnutrition and dehydration because people are too weak to get up and cook for themselves or get up and eat, or they're afraid they might eat or drink water and then have to use the bathroom, and they're afraid of using the bathroom because of the weakness and the fear of falling. So that image on the left really showcases the influence of a fall or fear of falling and how it affects participation. Conversely, on the other side, we have safe mobility. If Dr. Fox and I and everybody else in this room, if we all can work together to promote safe mobility and participation in meaningful activities, we can help people experience ongoing strength and social participation. And safe mobility adds to the ability to cook for oneself and drink. So they make meals, they eat, they drink their water, and they go out and meet with their loved ones and friends and family. So they have more participation. That can actually promote ongoing participation, ongoing strength, and ongoing safe mobility. You can start anywhere in those circles that you want because they all influence each other. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the key to safe mobility is to promote safe participation. And thank you for that beautiful image, Dr. Fox. I love that picture. Next. So there are 6 key exercises that promote safe mobility, and this comes out of Clemens and Cummings. It's called the Stepping On Safe Mobility Program. It came out of Australia, but it's utilized all over the country in the United States. And there are 6 major exercises. I picked these out of their total program. And, you know, it's standing there and doing side leg lifts, standing on one foot. You can't see me, but I'm doing it. Tandem stance is one foot right in front of the other. Sit to stands repeatedly, such as like if you were doing squats. Standing on your heels, standing on your toes. They activate the ankle strategy, which prevents falls. And foot lifts, where you straighten and bend your knee. All of these things help. For example, the side leg lifts. If you lift your leg out to the side, then that will help you step to the side in case you or your loved one or your client or patient loses their balance, then they can step to the side to catch their balance. Standing on one foot activates the ankle strategy, which is the first thing it keeps the balance. Sit to stand, strengthen the thigh muscles and the butt muscles so that people can come to stand easily and move more easily and walk. So all of these things help. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. But here's the problem. If we were to teach you those 5 or 6 exercises today, how many of you would actually do them indefinitely? How many of you would quit after a short period of time? If you would quit, feel free to click on the reaction tab with a thumbs up. Would you likely quit them in a certain amount of time? I know I would. So yes, exercises work if we do them. The problem is it's hard to follow through and do them. So what's the answer? How do we enhance follow through? Next, please. So we build them into our habits and our meaningful activities. That's why we started this whole presentation with meaningful activities. So how do we build them into our habits and routines? Well, we make sure we don't do too much too soon, because if it's too much, then we won't try any of them. So let's just start with 1 or 2 at a time. We include the fitness activities that we enjoy. We get to pick and choose which ones we want to do. Having a fitness buddy helps. I know my husband and I go swimming Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And there are many mornings, if he didn't get me going, I would not go. So it does help to have a buddy. Build it into our routines so that it becomes a natural habit, and build it into our natural environments where we spend our time, in our home, in our yard, etc. Next. So building the exercise into daily routines or the natural environments will help us to succeed in staying active and participating. Next. So here's an example of a scholarly project that Marissa Janke and Eliana Marie Louise Simpron completed. They actually took these exercises and built them into natural habits and routines. And they created this and made their own logo. It's called Home Occupations for Mainstay Elders. And they did this for the National Resource Center in particular. So Dr. Gray, you're familiar with this presentation. They gave us permission to utilize their ideas and their handouts for this presentation. So all of you also have access to this PowerPoint and the handouts that you can actually complete the handouts and add these exercises into your natural environments and routines. All right, next.
Dr. Jansen, can I interrupt? Can you tell them where they can access it at?
How do you mean the handout?
The program that the students developed?
Oh, well, they can access that. It's called Scholarly Commons. Scholarly Commons, and it's open and available to the public. Thank you very much. So you could type in a Google search box, Scholarly Commons, and you can look up their names, or my name too, because I was their advisor. And then you can find their entire scholarly projects. So they have worksheets in there for anyone who wants to build these exercises into their routines. They have additional other program activities included in outlines in there as well. Thank you. Thank you for the prompt. All right, so here's some examples of how we could build those exact exercises into different activities. So for example, with the side leg lifts, just stepping to the side with our toes pointed forward will activate that muscle that stabilizes a person's hip. So they, instead of walking and turning, they can sidestep while putting dishes away. Or standing on one foot, we could do it while brushing teeth. And by the way, these exercises would need to be done by a stable surface. So I intentionally use these as examples. The putting dishes away, they can use the countertop for stability with their other hand. They can use the sink basin for stability against their hips, or holding onto it with one hand while brushing teeth. So you could stand on one foot and brush and then switch. A tandem stance could be done standing behind a stable chair during TV commercials. Standing on heels or toes, can do that while waking up in bed. I also like the idea, how many of you have to stand there and wait for your soup or something to heat up in the microwave? And while you're waiting for that to heat up, that'd be a great time to do standing on toes, standing on heels, which I'm doing right now. It's too bad you can't see my feet. But standing on toes, standing on heels, and you could do it for 20 seconds while you're waiting. Sit to stands, person could do that while playing card games and get the whole crew to do it with you. Remember we said a buddy, exercise buddy? So that'd be a good time to say, okay, we're between hands or games in this cards. Let's everybody stand up 5 times. Knee kicks while sitting. Can do this while reading. Very simple and easy. So those are a few examples, but you know, this is all written. So I like pictures because pictures say 1,000 words, as my dad told me. So the next slide, please. Okay, so this is an example of Marissa Jenke's dad. She showed how he is doing a side leg lift while washing dishes. And he can do that repeatedly one side, or do it with the other side. He's got his hips stabilized up next to the countertop, and his hands are right on the edge of the sink. So he's really in a pretty safe, stable position for which to do the side leg lifts. Next. Here's the example of him brushing his teeth while standing on one foot. Again, you can see his pelvis is stabilized up against the countertop, and his free hand is holding on to the counter and the edge of the sink. So he's in a very stable, safe position for which to just stand on one leg. And then when he does the other side of his teeth, then he stands on the other leg. Next. Here is Dr. Gail Bass. She's another occupational therapist, and she's doing ankle pumps. The most important thing with preventing falls and promoting safe mobility is to do those ankle movements, forward, backward, even circles. Anytime you're getting those ankles to move, then they can be really quick in making subtle, fine adjustments to prevent loss of balance. So ankles are very important in preventing the loss of balance. In this picture, you can see we have a question here. How else might you do this at home? Where would you like to do the ankle pumps? You have access to a handout where you can actually write that in. Where would I do my ankle pumps? Maybe I would want to do ankle pumps during commercial breaks in my recliner when watching TV. There are lots of, it's infinite wherever you could do your ankle pumps. Just bending them forward and backward can make a very significant difference and quick. All right, next. Thank you. Sit to stands. This is one where Marissa's dad is doing sit to stands, doing commercial breaks. And maybe during the commercial, you do 5 or 10 of them. You don't have to do it over, but just building it into that natural routine of watching TV. Those commercial breaks can be a cue. Oh, time to get up, time to move. Next. And then the knee kicks. And Dr. Bass is doing this while reading. And so just getting those knee movings, getting the knees moving can be very helpful. By the way, moving the knees also decreases joint pain. So think about where you or your loved one or your patient or client could possibly do knee kicks in their own activities or in their home environment. Next. So these are just a few examples of how you can integrate or tie those particular exercises into your normal tasks, activities. We call them occupations in occupational therapy, routines, habits, and environment. But the key is for you is you get to choose. There's nothing more important than people having the right to choose so that they feel like they have a sense of control over their life and their aging and their own health and wellness. You get to choose how, when, and where you want to do it. The only thing we ask is that you do it safely. Making sure that you have a stable surface with you. A countertop will suffice. If you use a walker, that would be great. And for those who are not as mobile, for example, those who might really need a walker for stability, you will want to do these exercises with supervision from somebody who can work with you on safety strategies and who knows what your abilities are or your challenges. So an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, a fitness trainer, your physician, a nurse, and caregivers, it would be really good to do these exercises with supervision if there are mobility challenges, where especially one would need like a walker or a cane or any other assistive device. But for those of you who do not, you should be free to use safe mobility exercises. All right, I am going to hand off back to you, Dr. Fox. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Jansen. There's some really good comments that are coming up in the Q&A in the chat. So we're going to leave time is built in at the end so we can address some of those questions. And what I saw coming up was really, really good, really some excellent ideas. So as Dr. Jansen talked about earlier, you know, how fear of falling can be connected to nutrition, can be connected to isolation or participation. You also have to pull those into these 4 areas, or you can. So being active in all 4 of these areas is essential as well. So we have emotional, which actually connects with the isolation. You know, the more connections you can help them keep, even if it's by phone, echo, you know, other things that where they can see someone, those have been beneficial as well, but they help us stay engaged in life. So, you know, talking with people, I don't know about you guys, but so I've been working at home and I can hear my kids going, so I'm hoping the house isn't falling apart, but you have your kids at home with you and they're going to a virtual school and you kind of get tired, or you really want to talk to adults, you know, sometimes, which is something I really miss. So connecting, find a way to connect, still stay connected with people in the midst of the COVID, and hopefully we're going to be on the downswing here, but that also helps you keep mentally alert. You know, the more you can communicate with people and just kind of share some things that fits in with the emotional and the mental. Then you think about the spiritual. You know, sometimes that spiritual piece comes from those connections that you've made with other people in the community or things that you do. And as we know, spiritual is not connected to religion. Spiritual is something totally different, and I guess what fills us, you know, and gives us purpose and meaning. So connecting with these 4 also help increase our independence, improve sleep, and then just keep our minds in good condition and improves our mental health. So we can't forget this piece, even though we sometimes focus on the physical aspect. Connecting all of these then will help us really strengthen that elder person. So next slide. Here's the link in here for where you can access these. There's a couple that are coming up now, but the one too about safety and looking at the statistics profiles. But now we're going to look at actually some checklists or some things in the next couple slides that can help you go into the home, do a checklist, and see where possibly the individual could use some assistance. And I'm going to go back a minute to one of the comments that came up too that we don't often think about, but pets can actually cause a lot of falls, you know, and that was one of the focus areas that came up in the Q&A. And sometimes having a pet, elders will have pets because it's companionship. They have to care for that, that pet, get up, water them, etc. But also there is the challenge then of how maybe we look at how they where they're at in the home, or how we can decrease some of those issues as well. So next slide, please. Thank you. So here's what I was talking about, check for safety. If you go on that link on the last slide, you'll be able to access all the following next slides that we're going to see for safety. And it is focused on fall prevention for older adults. So next slide. So here you have one where you just walk through, and I was looking at, you know, the one where the gentleman was standing in the bathroom, and I was seeing like a throw a rug over a rug, you know, which I'm thinking is by the shower, and I'm thinking, well, okay, that one should probably go, you know, or just do maybe a larger one. But you can go through the home and you can check where these things are, and there are more checklists too when you run a check online. But I also think there's more in the program that Dr. Jansen and her students developed. So of course, one of the big one is big one is the rugs. And a lot of these you guys named out of the one slide too, where looking at the cords, you know, and other blankets. And so next slide. Stairs and steps are huge. Actually, a lot of times elderly are afraid to even do steps, you know, or we want to decrease the amount of steps that they have to do. But here's some things you can look at. You know, are things on the steps? Kids are bad for this. If there's grandkids or kids just around, they'll just leave things setting. Is there a light, you know, so they can have good light to see, or can you add a light? So at least there's that. And then are there handrails? Are they sturdy and can they provide good support? Next slide, please. Thank you. Excuse me. So in the kitchen, look at where the main things that they use, what shelf are they on? Can you bring that stuff down, you know, to a lower shelf? I personally don't care for step stools anytime, but look at there are some really good step stools out there, you know, if they need it just to get up to that first shelf. So look at it. Is that unsteady? If it is, remove it so they can't use it until you can get a good, you know, solid one in there. Bathrooms, look at the tub or shower floor. Are they slippery? Can you put non-slip strips on there? A lot of these bars, I think, you can even buy bars now that are suction cupped, and they really do well holding against a lot of weight. So look at those. Where can you provide bars? When my mom was alive, we had bars outside the bathroom, inside the bathroom, by the sink, because she used a walker, but she would get unsteady. And these bars just helped her, you know, just kind of, for nothing else, mentally, it just helped her feel that she was safe too, that she could access those. The picture down on the right side and bottom, I just loved it, so I added it. It made me smile. So next slide. Other things you can do, there's a question I know in the chat that we'll bring up, but it talks about have your doctor or pharmacist look at the medicines you take, especially if you're experiencing dizziness. Sometimes the medications will cause that. Sometimes too, you could look at their water intake. You know, if they're dehydrated, you're going to see some of the same things, or malnutrition, you're going to see some of those as well. Again, like Dr. Jansen said, do exercise that improve your balance, make your legs stronger, but also have your vision checked. So this is a nice checklist too, you know, just to look at medically where the individual is at, and then how can we strengthen some of that as well. One of the biggest things that I think I learned from my mom as well, because she would yell at me, is sometimes, you know, when you're growing up and they tell you, shut the lights off. You want to pay the electric bill? Well, I would go through the house and shut the lights off. And then my mom would say, turn the lights on. I can't see. You know, so it was like, you have to really adjust, you know, because our body adjusts. So when we can't see as well, we need more light. So things kind of reverse on themselves. But next slide, please. Some other ones, keep emergency numbers in large print, put a phone near the floor. For my mom, I had one of those emergency things that hung on her neck. And that helped her a lot too, just to feel safe, you know, because she could just hit it and someone would call. And that's the alarm device. The difficult one is when I was taking a shower and she called and she couldn't reach me. So then she called the ambulance and the fire department to find out where I was and if I was okay. So then when the police, the fire department, and the ambulance all showed up to my house, I was like, okay, Mom, let's talk about when really you should like hit that button, you know. Next slide. So in summary, of course, you know, we focused again on the physical with how to strengthen that, and it's essential because if we can keep that strong, then it will definitely feed into a balance and a good quality of life within the other three areas. And my mom and I used to talk a lot about looking at quality of life or quantity. And we have to really focus on quality because quantity does not matter if you're not, you know, having a balance or feeling like you're actually enjoying life. So these four components are all needed to create a holistic level of well-being. And they'll all connect together, going back to the connections that Dr. Jansen made earlier as well, looking at nutrition, participation, they all fit into this. So as you strengthen one area, the other areas will follow because they're all interconnected. They all, build and feed on each other. So next slide, please. So Megwitch, thank you. We hope this session has helped you create ideas, because these are just like a broad overlook, of things that you can do. There's some other ones like in-house gardening, could help, or outside gardening, and build up the planters higher, or going to powwows, and being able to at least enjoy those aspects too. So we want to just get some thoughts going as part of this presentation.